Okay, hi, I'm Cathy Walton. Matt, my husband, and I live in Building A, Unit 310. We have lived here 3 years. What Matt and I have found here at VOTG is community. Everyone's so pleasant, supportive, and giving. And we'd like to thank you all for being part of our community. My maiden name is Lloyd, and I've been called many names through my life. When I hear Catherine or Catherine Ann, I know I'm in trouble, but I don't know what I did. So, as for me, my values, personality, and humor were formed from watching my parents, grandparents, and great aunts. My maternal grandparents taught me how I never wanted to act, while my maternal grandmother taught me compassion, empathy, caring, treating everyone equally. I once had a boss that told me I was too egalitarian. I do treat everyone with respect and value, and my great aunts taught me laughter, humor, and adventurism. So I'm going to switch topics real quick. I know there was a ceremony this morning in honor of 9/11. This is a picture of the 9/11 memorial on the Twin Towers site. And in honor of those that lost their lives or were injured as a result of the terrorist tragedy on 9/11, I'd like to take a few seconds for a moment of silence. Thank you. My ancestors came from a very narrow latitudinal area, including Ireland, Wales, England, and Germany. My ancestors were farmers, tradesmen, and clergy. When they came to America, they applied their skills just as they had. So when they came to the States, they all stayed in the same area. So they were in Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. As a child, I spent a lot of summers in Cincinnati, Ohio, and Richmond, Indiana with my grandparents, and in Greenville, Ohio with my cousins and great aunts. I put together a timeline to show the many places I've lived, and when I'm asked, where are you from? It's just a really difficult question to answer because I've been to so many different places. So I was born in Marianna, Florida. We lived here 6 months, and then we moved to Texas, Ohio, and California. In 1960, we went to Rapid City, South Dakota, as my father was working for Ellsworth Air Force Base. I went to kindergarten and up through 3rd grade. In 1965, we moved to Texas, and I went to grades 4 through 8. In 1969, I moved to Virginia. I lived in Falls Church to attend high school. I froze. Okay. From high school, I moved, so you can see under the 1969, we have 1973, where I did my undergrad at Old Dominion University in Norfolk. And then Matt and I got married in 1976, and we moved to Richmond for me to work at Philip Morris, and I received my MBA from VCU. We lived there in Richmond. We lived there about 17 years, and then we moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and we were in the metro area for 8 years. When we then moved to the Charlotte metro area, and we were there for 14 years. We did a short stint in Texas of 16 months during COVID. And then we moved to Florida in 2021, and that's where we've stayed so far. This is a representative of all of the places that I've lived and I've visited. So I visited 43 out of 50 states. I've lived in 9 different states. They're the starred states. So mostly it's been on the East Coast, where I have mountains to the west and the shore to the east. I grew up as a service brat. My dad was a pilot in the Air Force. He flew KC-135s in the Cold War era, including the Cuban Missile Crisis. He attended Texas A&M and received his master's degree in data processing. After he graduated, he was immediately sent to Vietnam, where he had a squadron of forward air command pilots and planes. And facts were the little planes up here in the upper right-hand corner that went in close to fire the flares for the bombers to come in and empty their payloads. And they had some restrictions. He was shot at multiple times. He never lost a man. They were never supposed to blow up an elephant. And when my dad was on vacation in Hawaii, one of his pilots one time called in a strike that blew up a revered elephant. Dad came back from Vietnam and was assigned at the Pentagon. He was one of the main people standing up the Selective Service Data Center. And we didn't know where he worked for a couple of years. We weren't allowed to know what that location was. And he received this Distinguished Service Medal for his work. As children, we were brought up with national and state parks as our playgrounds. We learned about the stars, planets, and other celestial wonders. When we moved, we made new friends, we got involved with local activities, and lived our lives like ordinary folk. To this day, I have no problem fitting into any new community. We lived in beautiful places like the Black Hills of South Dakota. The picture here on the left, I'm getting a pointer, but so that I'll be able to do that. These are the Badlands on the right. It's Mount Rushmore, and you can see from the map where Mount Rushmore is, where the Black Hills are, where the Badlands are. And there's a famous drugstore since 1931. They were off the beaten path, and they put out signs to give away free ice water. So in 1931, they had their, folks started to come, and then everybody just talked about it, and they still go there today. Oh, one of the favorite parks, one of the favorite local parks that we visited often was Dinosaur Park. And so they had replicas of the various dinosaurs. These are a few of the national parks that we've gone to throughout the years. And Gateway Arch, Great Smoky Mountains, Death Valley, Glacier, Olympic, Petrified Forest, Sequoia, which is just amazing, as well as Redwood, Glacier Bay, Shenandoah, and New River Gorge in West Virginia. So I mentioned that I moved to Virginia in 1969. I came from Texas, and Virginia was a whole new world. I went from flat, dusty, and tumbleweeds to gorgeous scenery and green. I hung out with congressmen, senators, doctors, lawyers, sons and daughters, and then just ordinary kids. Everybody liked to talk to me because of my Texas accent. To this day, I pretty much take on the accent of wherever I am, even in Canada, eh? I went to undergrad school at Old Dominion, and some of you may remember that ODU had a decent men's and women's basketball program in the early 70s through the 80s. Matt and I moved to Richmond, as I mentioned, in 1981, and we both attended Virginia Commonwealth University. I received an MBA, and Matt's master's is in economics. I started out as a computer programmer for the Chesapeake Police Department for $9,888 annually. Digital Equipment Corporation, or how I used to refer to them as DEC, was one of the early pioneers in computer. The company was started in 1957, and it disappeared in the late 1990s. they had the mini computers, and they were able to compete against IBM because IBM hadn't developed and refined their mini computer offering yet. So DEC pretty much had the market on mini computers for several years. I noticed that we have a lot of software residents here, and they're going to know what I'm talking about when I talk about DEC, Compaq, and the old IBM. I was one of the first to have a Compaq luggable. That would be here on the left. Digital was Digital Equipment Corporation. And then the IBM data centers were huge with tapes and discs and a lot of air conditioning. They used a lot of power. So my luggable weighed 26 pounds, and it was my first portable computer. It's fun to compare the large data centers and computers that I grew up with and test it against the present when we use a phone that weighs hardly anything, and it is a computer. It's really come a long way. I have a Certified Project Management Professional certification. I've been a PMP since 2005, and I love traveling for work. And one of the perks for traveling for work was making points at hotels and airlines. So Matt and I did awesome trips for free, which is really nice. As a project manager, I made things happen and delivered solutions. What I did can be likened to an orchestra. I was the conductor, and the members of the orchestra represented departments, with individually skilled people working in the departments who were responsible for working with me to get the work done. I wasn't successful without them, and they weren't successful without me. It was important to build relationships with honesty, curiosity, humor, and recognition. Here's a sampling of the companies that I worked for through the years. So I was at Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Capital One. I improved processing of a scorecard for the government from 2 weeks and 13 people to 3 days and 2 people. So, and as well at Crustar, which merged with SunTrust and now became Truist, SunTrust, when they merged, adopted the wire transfer solution I implemented for Crustar. So I always got to hear about my work throughout the years, so that was a lot of fun. Philip Morris, I was there for 13 years, and that was a wild ride. I have a story about the Grand Canyon. My first cross-country air trip, I went first class. And this was in 1983, I think. And the pilot comes over the speaker and he says, well, folks, we have a beautiful day out here. And we've been given permission to take a couple of circles around the Grand Canyon. And don't worry, because I'm going to make sure both sides can see. And that would never happen in today's world, but we were really privileged. Okay, so Matt and I spent a lot of time playing Bracket Challenge, and visiting different cities to see regionals and first and second rounds of the NCAA basketball. So throughout the late 70s up till around 2016, we watched in person several rounds with several women's finals, and then regionals. We were in Kansas City, Cincinnati, Austin, and Charlotte. Charlotte was a favorite destination because I gave a $50 donation to the UNCC, which is University of North Carolina, Charlotte Sports Foundation, and that guaranteed us first access to the seats when they went on sale. We took advantage of this first, as long as they didn't get wise to it. And they significantly upped the annual fee. We stopped doing that. We've attended a lot of Major League Baseball games in several stadiums: LA Dodgers, St. Louis Cardinals, Baltimore Orioles, Atlanta Braves, Cincinnati, San Francisco Giants, and Seattle Mariners. In Richmond, we had the AAA minor team for Atlanta, and we were called the Richmond Braves. And during our time in Richmond, we saw Chipper Jones, Javier Lopez, Ryan Klesko, Jeff Frank Kerr, better known as Frenchie, and others, both play for the Richmond Braves and the Atlanta Braves. Mm. In 1999 and 2015, we went to the Women's Soccer World Cup Finals. And in 1999, it was in Pasadena. In 2015, we went to Vancouver. And I wanted to show you, so this is the scoreboard in the stadium when they were playing. And then we went up to Whistler, which is the Olympic Winter Village, where they hosted the 2010 Winter Olympics. And it was just north of Vancouver. And so they have glaciers year-round. They have snow year-round. They have sledding and skiing and all of those activities, even in the dead of summer in July. And that's us on a tram going from one part of the park to another. Okay. All right, so I said we did a lot of hiking, and we're drawn to waterfalls and whale watching. And so this, in the early 2000s, we went out in Boston Harbor and got to see a whale do all of its acrobatics. It was an amazing show. It was an amazing show. The first Thanksgiving we didn't spend with family. We ventured to Central Coast, California. It's amazingly beautiful. We drove along the Pacific Coast Highway and took in incredible sights. From top to bottom, you can see the coastline, the Big Sur, and then this is a whale's tail. These are orcas, and this is a whale blow. And all of these were taken in Monterey Bay. And that was in November. So they actually wintered in Monterey Bay. So once the nieces and nephews became teenagers, we started taking blended family trips. And our first one was in 2008, and we went to the Mayan Dude Ranch in the hill country of Texas. And it was near San Antonio, so we went to San Antonio and did the river walk, which that's a picture of. And then this is the Alamo. This is the one that you always see in the movies. Oh, funny aside, when I was in the 5th grade, I built a replica of the Alamo out of sugar cubes for my 5th grade Texas history class.
Sugar cube.
We did a second blended trip to San Diego. Here's the skyline of San Diego from the Stars and Stripes. And yes, it was the same boat that raced and won the America's Cup. And then we took an Alaska cruise. We did lots of things on ship and off ship. It was just amazing country if you haven't done it, and you can do it. It's just beautiful. Now this is a glacier that calved, so it sounded like an explosion because we were in an area that was really encompassed, and when you heard that break away from the iceberg, and fall into the sea, it was loud, very loud. We also went to, this was our last blended family trip. We went to Niagara Falls on the Canada side in 2019. and it was just absolutely beautiful. Matt and I did all kinds of hikes and tours, and while my family went to the winery. Some of our favorite things to do is hiking in the Smokies and the Blue Ridge Mountains, photography, spending time in Asheville, and using the Biltmore as our backyard, with kayaking and enjoying the Biltmore Gardens. Atop Mount Pisgah, which is right outside of Asheville, where the Biltmore is, there's a lovely inn, and we've spent many vacations there for our anniversary, for July 4th. And so you can see the front of the inn, and then these are pictures that I took of the valley from the balcony of the room we stayed in. And so on the right, it's the valley, and you can see that there's dips through there. And over here, the valley is completely fogged in. So we used to see, there's several cities in the valley, and they did their fireworks on July 4th, and you could see the city do it, the city, it was great. We hiked several trails on the Blue Ridge Parkway. We love taking pictures of wildflowers. You can see the mountains, how they roll. That's why they get the name of the Blue Ridge. And then these two pictures, the maroon and the white, next to it are trilliums. And they're natural wild plants. I think people probably put them in their gardens now, but these are all out on a trail somewhere. And then rhododendron, mountain laurel. The first time we ever saw mountain laurel was in the Smokies. I was like, what is that? And then dwarf irises. We loved the Biltmore. It was, you can see, it looks out over the mountains. This is a picture of the Biltmore completely mirrored in what they call Mirror Lake. So you can see it down here. And then this is the front of the Biltmore. We learned so much about the engineering of the house. It was built in the 1880s. They had running water, they had AC, and they had heat. And just all of the engineering that went behind that, and the stories that are told about being able to get those kinds of conveniences out in the middle of nowhere was just a lot of fun. We typically went to photograph the Biltmore Gardens 3 to 4 times a year. We go in the early spring before the roses came. The roses come in May. And then peonies, dogwoods, rhododendron, flame azaleas, wildflowers, and many other blooms. And so I want to share a couple of our favorite pictures that we took in the garden. So this is it's a hibiscus, but it's a different breed. Then you can see the bumblebee and the orange flower. And this again is the hibiscus, and then this is a peonies, azaleas, tulips, and this rose is one of my favorite, and then here's another of my favorites. Okay, Village on the Green, Congregation of Birds. So a couple weeks ago, we had the turtles, the big turtles that are in the pond behind Building A. We had them stirring up the floor of the pond, and they were kicking up schools of fish. And so all of these birds just lined the shore. And you can see there's a wood stork, there's an ibis, there's a tricolored heron, you've got a great white egret in the background. I mean, they were just incredible. And they were all getting fish, and they would chase each other, which was just hilarious. So these are all pictures I've taken here at VOTG. outside my window. We had whistling ducks who came by. This is a great picture of a tricolored heron in the crepe myrtle. This snowy egret, this is his fighting plumage. He's the funniest thing, so he looked like a punk rocker when his head or feathers would just go up. And he would just start running, and you could tell that it's a snowy egret, one from the black legs as well as the yellow feet. And then we've never seen a roseate spoonbill here before, and we saw one during this feeding frenzy. Here's a great blue heron going to his tree for the night. The snowy egret fishing. So what they do is they use their talons, their feet, to kick up fish, and they grab it by their beak. So they don't actually go beak first, like you usually see waterfowl doing. They go feet first, and then kick it up. And that's courtesy of Debbie Meckham in Building B. And then we have a young snowy egret. I just thought he was so cute. This is a little blue heron. You can tell by the turquoise bill. Underneath him is a young little blue heron. For their first year, they're white, but you can still see that turquoise beak. Here's a wood stork. I once saw a wood stork eat a 4 to 5 foot snake. This is a red heron. And then a wood duck, our resident red-shouldered hawk. And the kingfisher usually comes back. He stays away for the summer. He comes back at the end of August, so he's back, and I hear him. It's lots of fun. We have a pine tree outside our window, and the anhinga and the kingfisher and various birds will just park themselves up there. And then this is a great white heron, and we now have, well, we haven't seen him in a couple of days, but we now have an alligator that's about 2.5 to 3 feet. And you can see the white egret is keeping an eye on the gator, but the gator's not really interested because he's bigger than him. I have to put a plug in for the Orlando wetlands in Christmas, Florida. It's just absolutely beautiful. It's not only a haven for all different kinds of birds, it also naturally filters water from a water sewage treatment plant. I'm going to read to you what they said on their website. Every day, 16 million gallons of reclaimed water flows 17 miles from Orlando's Iron Bridge facility to the Orlando Wetlands Park. Here, the water flow through the wetland plants. Those plants absorb nutrients such as nitrates and phosphates that they use for their own nourishment. And then once the water completes its 30 to 40 day journey through the park, it is sampled before going into the canals that go into the St. Johns River. And it's cleaner than the water in the St. Johns River. So I get involved in a lot of professional groups, and in one, basically in answering who am I, all of my life experiences taught me so much about myself and other people. Listening is a skill that you hone so that you get to know people. You're not the one always talking. I participate, like I said, in different associations, and this is a Wordle where my teammates enter these words to describe me and how I behaved in the previous 9 months. And then I also received this great birthday card from my college friend, as well as a current resident at VOTG. And it says, be bright, be beautiful, be fabulous, and full of fun. In other words, just another day of being you. Okay, from a community perspective, I'm the scribe for the finance committee and work on the reporting team. As well, I serve as the building representative for Building A, along with Sue Scambas, Sue Godot, and Carolyn Tolles. And that's my story. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for listening.